Welcome to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. I'm Mike Calabrese, joined by two special guests here today, Sean Zerillo and Colin Whitchurch in the guest seats here, giving out their expert picks throughout the show. We're going to talk about best bets. We're going to talk about favorite underdogs and the rest of their card. We also have Grant Neiffer's Dinger card here on Tuesday, as always. But we're going to get started with the biggest news story on Monday in the Bigs, and that was Ohtani's return to the bump. He hits 100 miles per hour on the gun. He does give up 2 singles and 1 earned in that 1 inning worth of work. But I just want to see where you guys are at in terms of your expectations going in and how you feel about him moving forward, whether he's a starter or a reliever in the future here for the Dodgers. Obviously, his value at the dish remains the same. But at this point, LA needed a little bit of juice in terms of their pitching rotation. So being able to turn to him, seeing what he gave him in 1 inning, I know it's an incredibly limited sample size. But Sean, what were your opinions on his return 663 days in the making?
Yeah, he hit 99 on the gun. That was his average fastball, average 96.5 for his career. Now, obviously, maybe a little bit extra amped up first start with the Dodgers and also able to air it out a little bit more across 1 inning than he would be across 5 or 6. So throwing harder, but it is a good sign to see that he's throwing harder than his career average coming off in his first start coming off of Tommy John. And it seems like he's going to continue to sort of ramp himself up in this way. We may not see him elongate to a 5-inning start for about a month plus at this point because he's going to continue rehabbing at the major league level. It's not like he's going to go down and come back up. He said in the interview after the game that he just kind of feels better overall warming up as a pitcher. He feels much better going into the game as a DH, doing his whole pitching routine. It feels like for him warms him up to actually hit as opposed to just getting him ready as a pitcher. So I think overall, athletically for his body, it's probably a good thing just to get different muscles moving, get everything incorporated and keep loosening up. And it seems like he actually enjoyed the routine and doing the whole thing of it, as opposed to doing a bullpen or doing a simulated game, cooling down and then warming back up for the game again. He's just kind of doing it all together. So I think efficiency, for his body, kinesiology, I think it all makes sense for him to just sort of ramp up in actual games and let the bullpen take it over behind him. The issue that you run into is a situation like today, where the Dodgers threw 7-8 pitchers. I can't remember exactly how many they threw last night, but even behind Ohtani and Calabrese, they still had to bring in 5 different relievers. Now you're starting another bullpen game today on the 17th, where I'm thinking a lot back to the Padres-Dodgers game from last week in San Diego, where they just threw out Matt Sauer for 110 pitches, let him give up 10 runs, and then when they were done with him, they brought in Kike Hernandez to knuckleball it out for the final 3 innings. So the Dodgers can approach these Ohtani games like rehab games, and they can empty their bullpen behind him, but they're probably going to have to sacrifice a game in the following day or a couple days later because they just don't have the rotation depth right now. And they can't throw a bullpen game 3 out of 5 days and then hope Yamamoto gives them 7 when he actually starts. So good to see Ohtani look healthy, but the Dodgers' rotation issues and their rotation depth does continue to be a significant concern. And giving Ohtani, these 1-inning starts and needing another bullpen day and not having an actual legitimate starting pitcher behind him does kind of hurt their pitching depth going forward.
Yeah, Colin, to piggyback on that, let's assume that there's no injury setbacks and he works his way back up to being able to give them 4 or 5 innings. Do you think he is of more value coming out of the bullpen traditionally, pitching in the 6th, 7th, 8th inning, or do you think the Dodgers, as they're currently constituted in terms of the rotation, really need him to be able to step in and be that 3rd or 4th starter in the rotation, assuming that he can get to, let's call it 80 pitches at some point when he gets his stamina up moving forward?
Well, in terms of team needs, especially going into the later portions of the season in October, I think he can do whatever they want. In terms of long-term fit as a pitcher, you want this guy starting. He was a top 5 starting pitcher in baseball when he was healthy. I thought it was really interesting. It's such a unique situation, obviously. I mean, everything with Ohtani is a unique situation, but we literally have, as Sean alluded to, a pitcher rehabbing like he would normally do in AAA, except at the major league level. Only Ohtani would do this, and only the Dodgers are a team that can even afford to do this. As Sean mentioned, it's kind of costing them a little bit right now because their pitching depth is so questionable. It's also going to be interesting to see what they do depending on how many more actual quote-unquote rehab starts he needs. if this, division race stays tight. Like, you would expect the Dodgers to be able to do this and not care about doing this, because the Dodgers have been, more or less punting the regular season, just sitting back and winning 100 games for the last 5 years or so. The Giants are only 2.5 games back. The Giants just made a huge win now trade. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit more about Devers later. But it's really interesting to see, okay, he threw 1 inning last night. Is he going to throw 1 inning again in a week? Is he going to throw 2 innings? But I do believe in the long term, even if the Dodgers get to a point where, okay, they've got Glass now healthy, okay, they've got Snell healthy, which are big maybes at this point. Neither of them are on a timetable right now where we can expect to see them anytime soon. But even if that's the case, Ohtani is the Dodgers' best starting pitcher. Ohtani, a fully actualized, fully realized Shohei Ohtani is their best starting pitcher. That's what they're going to want him to do. Maybe, the rehab and the team doctors and the biomechanics and all that are going to see it and say, we don't want him throwing more than 3 innings for the duration of 2025. Then sure, you find spots to deploy him in October. That's a huge bullpen weapon behind the rest of these guys in the rotation. Again, a fully actualized rotation. But until we get to that point, I think where he's going to be at is just going to be dependent on how long this rehab takes. I do want to shout out, though, a couple of our colleagues yesterday really sharply were on the under on his strikeout total. It was 1.5 at minus 130. Didn't jump on it myself, but he looked amazing. But even looking amazing, knowing he's only going 1 inning, Luis Arias was going to be one of the 3 hitters he faced. He's only struck out 5 times all season. So even in a perfect Ohtani inning, that would require him to strike out both Fernando Tatis Jr. and Manny Machado to cash the over. Obviously didn't work out like that. The under still cashed easily. But it's going to be interesting to see how things progress going forward. If he's a 3-inning guy, if they keep him at 1 inning for a while. Either way, really excited to see him back out there. Once we get to the point where he's a fully stretched out starter, watch out.
I just have one other brief note, because I mentioned going into the start yesterday, I was curious what pitch mix he would use, and the cutter that he had been throwing for 3 of the final 4 years, or his 3 final years with the Angels, he scrapped. He didn't throw a single one in his first start with the Dodgers. What he did do differently was press down on his sinker. He's never thrown his sinker more than 6% of the time in the season. First start back with the Dodgers, sinker 29% usage rate. Now, it was a very small sample. Probably wanted him to throw more fastballs as opposed to breaking stuff in that start. But I do think it's interesting that the Dodgers had him incorporate the sinker a little bit more, and maybe they make him more of a sinker slider guy going forward, especially if he's going to be pitching out of the bullpen. I do think that makes a little bit more sense. And Dodgers like to keep the ball on the ground. They love the sliders, but they do tend to prefer the sinkers to the 4-seam fastballs too. So 4-seam rate, identical to where it was previously, but just worth noting, trading the cutters for sinkers could be how the Dodgers modify him moving forward, and want to keep an eye on that pitch mix and pitch usage, because he's constantly changed himself throughout his career.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It's very possible that the Dodgers said, hey, it's your first time throwing to live hitting in 2 years. Just go air it out, do your thing. Yeah. We'll tinker with the pitch mix later. But if that's the case, Sean, then that would be really notable.
Yeah, ground ball rate would probably increase, right? Fewer home runs. So, yeah, just kind of changes his profile, batted ball profile, all that. And was curious what the Dodgers would do with him. We haven't seen him pitch in over 2 years. I was curious what they had in terms of pitching development. Hopefully they didn't alter his slider, because they seem to have the arm death ball slider that, every pitcher breaks after 100 pitches. So
no organization loves to lie more than the Dodgers when it comes to what they're going to do going forward. You hear it talked about all the time. I think it was just last week, Dave Roberts was asked about Ohtani pitching. He said, I think his quote was, the odds of him pitching before the All-Star break are more than 0. Obviously a week, they had to have known by then that he was starting this week. So regardless of what they say, I'm not going to believe that Ohtani's going to do what he's doing until he does it, because who the hell knows? They game theory the shit out of their plans more than any Oregon baseball, I feel like.
All right, it is time. Tuesday, June 17th. We got 4 segments to hit your best bet, favorite underdog, the rest of your card, and we also have Grant's Dinger card on Tuesday. Let's start with best bets. The Rangers and the Royals are headed in opposite directions. The Royals have lost, I want to say, 8 of 9 at this point. They are in an absolute nosedive, whereas the Rangers have won 7 of 8. They're sending Jack Leiter to the hill here. Some promising numbers for the young arm, but he does have command issues that worry me a bit. 3 performances with 4 walks or more in his last 7 starts. So let's start there in terms of what you're expecting out of Leiter in this matchup, Sean.
Yeah, I think this is a really good matchup for him because this Royals offense is very impatient. Colin talks a lot about the walk props searching for offenses that are patient. The Royals are quite the opposite. They have the lowest walk rate in baseball, but they also rank 27th both in terms of swinging strike rate, and chase rate and swing percentage overall. They swing at absolutely everything, and they've actually gotten worse over the past 30 days in terms of swing rate, chase rate, walk rate. They're down about a 1 percentage point in the wrong direction across all 3 of those categories over the past month plus. So really good matchup for Leiter just in terms of patience, because as you said, he does have really good stuff. 124 stuff plus on his fastball, 106 on his slider, 104 on his sinker, 107 on his changeup. So 4 above average pitches by pitch models, but the command is wonky. 12.1% walk rate this season. 24% called strike plus whiff rate. Major league average is about 8.5% and 27%. So below average in both of those categories. But Seth Lugo, on the other hand, is also a regression candidate. Lugo's strikeout minus walk rate, his BABIP, strand rate, all kind of indicate that he should be closer to a league average pitcher because he's running lower than his career BABIP by about 40 points, running higher than his career strand rate by about 10%. Last year, he overachieved as well, but his expected ERA was about 3.75 compared to an ERA of 3. This year, there's about a 2-run gap between those numbers, and also his body ERA. So he has a 3.18 ERA, a 5.34 expected ERA, and then his body ERA is 4.83. Last year was closer to 4. So I think across the board, Seth Lugo just showing decreased stuff this season after throwing a number of innings last season. I think there's a potential that he's injured under the surface. And when you combine that with the fact that the Royals currently have Cole Reagans on the IL, Kyle Wright on the IL, they just need innings and they do not have a ton of depth for their rotation. I think Lugo is just trying to run out there and give them innings. You see the strikeout minus walk rate dipping, especially over the past month or so. And then the last piece is that the Rangers offense is finally waking up after being in a slumber for about 2.5 months. Since June started, the Rangers rank 5th in WRC plus, top 5 in walk rate, top 5 in strikeout rate, 8th in isolated power over that span. So the Rangers offense finally seems like it's getting going, and that is without Corey Seager doing absolutely anything for them, because even over that span, where as a team they've posted a 125 WRC plus against right-handed pitching, Seager has a 52 WRC plus. It has been everybody around him providing the production. So they're not even getting what they should be from their best hitter, and they're finally producing at the level that we expected to coming into the year, which is a top 5 offense. So I made this line about minus 145. I would bet the Rangers up to minus 133. Not too many money lines I like on the board today. This is the only one that I actually bet, but Texas up to minus 133, my favorite bet for Tuesday.
Colin's best bet, you're targeting the White Sox and the Cardinals, a total under 8.5. Against even competent pitching, the White Sox are capable of going for 2 runs or less basically any night. To give a little bit of perspective, the Rockies are a tick better in virtually every hitting category. So the White Sox lineup has just been miserable throughout the entire season. And in the last episode, we talked about Giolito and how he's kind of a whipsaw pitcher. He either gives you incredible stuff for 6 or 7 innings or he gets absolutely shelled. Well, Matt Liberatore has been somebody who's been streaky, not necessarily up and down start to start. He's had 8 starts in a row with 2 earned or less. Then he gives up 14 earned across his last 3 starts. So he went hot, then he went cold, failing to make it to the 6th inning in any of those games where he gave up 14 across those 3 starts. This seems like a really good buy low spot for him in general if you're interested in the Cardinals. But if he does go out and silence the bats from the White Sox, 8.5 seems like a pretty steep number. So talk me through a little bit of the fundamentals of this play on the total.
Yeah, so the White Sox have actually been a little bit better offensively against left-handed pitching than right-handed pitching this season on the full season data, which makes my play on the under a little bit confusing. Um, the White Sox lineup is much different today, though, than it has been for a majority of the season. They have a lot more left-handed bats in the lineup. Well, Venable could, do some platooning today with some of his lesser quality right-handed hitting. But right now, you look at the lefties in the lineup. They have 4 basically regular lefties in the lineup and a 5th first baseman, Ryan Noda. They've been giving quite a bit of playing time since they claimed him off waivers from Boston. Even if Venable goes full platoon against Liberator, what you're gaining in the platoon advantage, you're losing in just the quality of hitter. The ceiling is already incredibly low on a lot of these players. Say he goes from Andrew Benintendi down to Michael A. Taylor, Mike Tauchman down to Austin Slater, Josh Rojas subbing for as bad as he's been, subbing him down to Vinny Capra or Brooks Baldwin. It's rough. It's not great offense there. And if he's going to keep some of his lefties in the game, that includes rookie Kyle Teal, who has been decent since getting the call up. But the lineup, regardless of what you're getting out of this lineup, you're either getting a whole bunch of lefties against Liberator, who's allowed a 477 OPS to lefties this year, or you're getting righties who are just who aren't good enough to start for the Chicago White Sox. I guess that's the best way of putting it. White Sox offense as a whole has been better now that they're fully healthy, like I said, but I don't like their chances against him. I think it could be emblematic to what we saw the last time they faced a lefty last week against Framber Valdez. He shut them down. He had 12 strikeouts in 5 innings in that game for Houston. So Liberator, as you mentioned, Mike, has been very up and down, but I think that this is a good matchup for him, despite the fact that if you were to just look at the splits, the WRC plus splits, you'd say, oh, the White Sox, for all of their offensive struggles, the one side that they match up well against is lefties. I just don't think that's necessarily going to be the case tonight. On the other side, the Cardinals are somewhat split neutral. They're a little bit better against right-handed pitching, but I have faith in Shane Smith. He's probably going to be one of the more unlikely all-star selections in recent memory. As a Rule 5 pick who has become the guy in the White Sox rotation, like he's their best starting pitcher by far. He is their most likely all-star rep. Sean, you and I talked in the preseason quite a bit about White Sox pitchers, how one was bound to break out under the tutelage of Brian Bannister and Ethan Katz. We talked a lot about Sean Burke. Both of you and I had a little Rookie of the Year lotto ticket on him that's not going all that great. We talked a little bit about Jonathan Cannon, who was going to be that kind of like star pupil under this pitching tutelage, and it's been Shane Smith. Surprisingly, we didn't even talk about him in the preseason. 13 starts for him. He has not allowed more than 300 runs in a single start. Walks are his one issue. That's kind of stung him a little bit, stopped him from going deeper into games. But the Cardinals are 24th in walk rate against right-handed pitching this season. Normally, I might shy away from the bullpens, especially in a White Sox game. One of the worst bullpens in baseball, but they've been performing a little bit better of late. Venable's been really, really specific about his matchups and picking and choosing his spots. And both teams are coming off of a fresh. They're coming in fresh after a day off on Monday, so that makes me a little bit more confident going with the full game total. If you want to stick to the first 5. Our colleague Charlie Wright gave that out over at Scores and Odds already today. I wouldn't blame you. I like the first 5 as well. But the full game under 8.5, minus 115, that's my favorite bet tonight.
Just want to mention Adrian Hauser for the White Sox as well. Velo up 2 miles an hour this year. He was throwing 93.6 with the Mets last year, up to 95.1 with Chicago. So it seems like he may be a trade chip for them potentially at the deadline as well. Reminds me of what Eric Fede gave them last season before they ended up flipping him to the Cardinals. So yeah, the White Sox, for all the discredit that they get and all the hate that they get, they seem to be pretty decent at pitching development and getting guys back, or even rejuvenating guys who have had previous success. Seem to be more the left-handed development that they had going on, but optimizing Shane Smith with one really good pitch and getting him to a functional pitcher. So Colin, this is the one, as we lead into the underdog section, this was the one team showing potential dog value for me today. I made the White Sox about plus 115. They're about plus 130 on the money line. So even though they do have that tough matchup against the left-handed starter, Any thoughts on their bullpen potentially keeping it competitive late? Their bullpen seemingly been like functional lately. It hasn't been an absolute outright disaster like the Nationals bullpen has been or the Rockies pen has been. So any thoughts on the White Sox as a relatively short home dog today at around plus 130?
Yeah, it's funny. We obviously talked quite a bit about the White Sox in the preseason. I talk about the White Sox a lot. I'm a White Sox fan. Anyone who's listened to this podcast for any amount of time knows that. A sad, depressed White Sox fan. I am definitely intrigued by them on the money line, especially if you believe that, their splits against lefties and Venable pulling the right strings is going to work against Venable. They actually have kind of underperformed this year relative to expectations. They're 4-19 in one-run games, which kind of speaks to the lack of bullpen quality. But as you mentioned, and as I alluded to earlier, their bullpen has been a little bit better of late. Mentioned Rule 5 pick Shane Smith. They have 2 Rule 5 picks on this roster. Mike Vassell has probably been their best reliever this year. He's kind of picked and choose his spots to use Cam Boozer, Jordan Leisure, Grant Taylor. They just called up. I don't know if you guys have talked about Grant Taylor on this pod at all.
Yeah.
Top 100 prospect. They promoted from Double-A Birmingham straight to the majors. This is the White Sox pitching development is good. Yes, for all of their problems, their hitting development is way behind. You saw what they did going back to, everyone thought Chris Sale was a reliever. Everyone thought Garrett Crochet was a reliever when they drafted him. They kind of had these formulas of guys that they could turn around and fix. They're trying to do that with Hagen Smith in the minors right now. But Grant Taylor is following the path that the White Sox have done with a lot of pitching prospects. They call him up earlier than a lot of people expect or thought they should. Like, you're 25 games under 500. Why do you need to promote this guy from Double-A Birmingham right now? But he's basically going to do, like, you look at what the Dodgers are doing with Dalton Rushing right now. He's backing up Will Smith, and it's basically like an apprenticeship. Like, we want you sitting in our catchers meetings every day. We want you learning from one of the best catchers in baseball. And now they have Grant Taylor. The White Sox have Grant Taylor, who they're going to call up and basically say, your stuff is good enough to get major league hitters out right now. We're going to give you that test early on in a relief role. And maybe he's a reliever long-term. A lot of people think he is a reliever long-term. But, down the road, they say, all right, you've learned how to get major league hitters out. Now we're going to work on the longevity and make you a starting pitcher. Regardless, I'm getting a little bit deeper than we mean to on this terrible baseball team. But regardless, Grant Taylor, an above-average arm in the bullpen, helping to flesh that out a little bit. So, again, 4-19 in one-run games. The bullpen has been a little bit better. Yeah, I mean, if I were pulling the trigger on another underdog other than the one I'm giving out today, I would consider the White Sox. This is my biggest flaw as, a baseball bettor, is I generally try to stay away from betting on or against my favorite team because I just don't think I can pull the fandom out of my brain and look at it logically. And so all of that said, yes, when you're going to want to bet the White Sox as underdogs, you're generally going to want to do it in Shane Smith starts. And all of the stars seem aligned to where they seem like a live dog tonight if they're not going to win outright.
I'm actually hearing in from our producer right now, David. He said there's so much fan mail asking for more White Sox coverage. So if we could just stretch this another 10 minutes, that's what the people want. I
mean, last year it was White Sox. This year it's Rockies. I'm bringing us back to White Sox talk this year. We need to talk all about the worst team in baseball. The second worst team in baseball. My apologies.
You know what, Colin? Let's just stick with your thoughts on the bigs. You said that it can be difficult to get out of your fandom brain and to get analytical. So let's get analytical with your actual underdog play here on Tuesday. The Twins, which I guess this is the portion of the podcast where we ask, is Andrew Abbott fraudulent? Because the young lefty has gone from quality arm to ace this season. He gave up all of 2 earned across all of May. That was 6 starts. Now he's coming off a complete game shutout of the Guardians. Noteworthy in that one, he threw over 100 pitches for the first time this entire season. Is this just a pricing issue, and that's why you're in on the Twins, or are there tiny indicators under the hood saying that Abbott is not actually a top 10 pitcher in the majors right now, as some people are pointing to?
Yeah, I mostly picked this game to give us an opportunity to talk more about mine and Sean's favorite pitcher, Andrew Abbott. Continues to confound, like you mentioned, complete game shutout in his last start against Cleveland. It was hilariously competent performance. Just a little bit inside knowledge here. I'm in a dynasty league where I own Abbott. In that league, you get bonus points for complete games and for shutouts. And if you watched that game in the 9th inning, just shout out to Terry Francona, who was doing everything in his power to get his boy a complete game shutout. And it was a 1-0 game. It's not like they were up 10-0. He was at 100 pitches. He walked Steven Kwan to lead off the inning. Immediately, any manager in baseball, Dave Roberts is managing. You're pulling your guy, right? Especially with some decent back end arms there in the bullpen. Induced a double play, erased Kwan right then, and then with Jose Ramirez up, facing Jose Ramirez for the 4th time, he allows a hard hit single. Carlos Santana's up as the winning run. He flies out to the wall and left on a ball that had to have been hit 100 plus miles an hour. Francona stuck with my boy the entire time. I don't know how he did it. We get a 9-inning complete game shutout out of Andrew Abbott. It turns out, I've referenced the he can't keep getting away with this meme all the time. It turns out Andrew Abbott can keep getting away with this. So naturally, here I am fading him against the Twins and their intriguing young pitcher, David Festa. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on Festa, Sean. I'm going to ask you to weigh in here when I finish this, but how you handicap him. His stuff plus is, it's kind of average. His fastball, stuff plus likes his fastball a bit. Thinks his secondaries are below average. And he's an intriguing young pitcher because he's right underneath the top pitching prospects of that everyone hears about, right? That everyone owns in their fantasy leagues. He was never a top 100 guy by any of the major outlets, but he misses bats at a decent clip. He's right around league average in a lot of those plate discipline metrics. And he seems like a guy who could be a rotational mainstay for Minnesota, maybe a mid to back end guy. So for today, this handicap specifically in a Festa Abbott matchup, yes, Mike, it is kind of just a numbers thing. I think that, I love Andrew Abbott. I'm going to be rooting for him in every single start he makes. But right now, coming off of the best start of his career, I think the books might be overvaluing him a little bit and making him a favorite in Reds Twins. And getting the Twins in this matchup at a little bit better than a coin flip is too good for me to pass up. So I like the Twins money line here, around plus 105.
Yeah, I'll just give my brief David Festa thoughts. I mean, the primary thing is that projection systems prefer David Festa to Andrew Abbott. They have Festa's projected FIP range between 3.8 and 4. Andrew Abbott between 413 and 488. Now, Abbott is a guy who I think projection systems are going to continue to miss on because his expected ERA this year is around 3. But compare the career strikeout minus walk rates for Festa and Abbott, or even compare Festa's career mark, which is 18.7%, to Festa's mark or to Abbott's mark this season. Abbott is at 18% this year. So Festa has outran him in a brief major league sample, where Abbott career 10%, 14% career for Abbott. You match up the career averages, Festa's been better. You match up the projections, which prefer Festa. I think Festa is a very good pitching prospect. I like Zebby Matthews for the Twins as well. I'll never be right on Andrew Abbott, apparently, because I bet the Reds money line 2 starts back. He finally blew up for the first time all season. Brewers, I think it's the first time he's given up more than a couple of runs this season. And then, of course, Colin, I had the over in the last start. And he basically shut down the Guardians for the entire game. So I can't get Andrew Abbott right. I got him right 3 starts back, I believe. I think I had the under where he pitched well. But beyond that, I think I've been wrong on him every single start this season. Thankfully, I'm so grateful that my model does not show value on this game. So I do not have to bet it, but I do like David Festa. And to point out that the projections prefer Festa to Abbott, I think is interesting. And I think at worst, they're very comparable and dead even with one another. So
I think,
I like Festa. And a guy, I think most importantly, the most interesting fact about his major league stats so far, they've only used him out of the bullpen once. And that was specifically as a bulk reliever. They have not at any point said, hey, maybe we should try this guy in the bullpen. They're planning on using him as a starting pitcher, and they keep using him as a starting pitcher. So that shows their faith in what they think he is going forward, and projections certainly view him as a league average pitcher as well.
I think the Abbott thing, there needs to be, I don't know if either of us were handicapping baseball back during this guy's peak, but the guy who always comes to mind, the guy who just is going to outpitch his projections time and time again, start after start, is Matt Cain. It's Matt Cain syndrome for the Giants. Back, he was always the number 2 behind Lincecum, right? And then behind Bumgarner. And you look at his peak in the late 2000s, early, it's he had a 2.89 ERA and a 3.89 FIP. It's that was him And I don't think Abbott's as good as Kane, but like he's just going to be one of those guys. Every now and then you see these guys who are just, their ERA is constantly like a run lower than their FIP. John Danks, I feel like, was one of those guys too. Maybe it's just the crafty lefties, who just don't rack up these high strikeout totals. But yeah, Abbott is certainly one of those guys.
All right, Sean, I know you had a few leans, but no official play here in the underdog segment, but rest assured you still came with something. You did your homework assignment, which is you think that there's an interesting angle in terms of the ripple effect of the Devers trade, and you look at the potential for the Padres to miss the playoffs. But before we get into that, I just want to kind of ask in terms of how you think about adding an all-star or, a major bat in a lineup, because much is made from a gambling perspective about the limited value of pro bowlers outside of a quarterback in the NFL. If you're a top wide receiver or a tight end or best offensive weapon, that's only going to move the point spread 1.5, 2 points max. The opposite is true in the NBA. Obviously, if you bring in a superstar with, a sport where you only have 5 players on the court at the same time. So walk me through Devers and what he can do for this lineup as a single bat, but a significant one, and adding it, and what it's going to impact the entire NL West.
Yeah, I'm messing with the model right now. I just plugged in LaMonte Jr. for Rafael Devers to see how that would affect the Giants' money line projection tonight. Devers is worth about 2.5% compared to LaMonte Jr., assuming he's going to DH. So moving a team from minus 124 to minus 137 on a projection in terms of just the offensive upgrade. Obviously, you're not getting any sort of defensive piece with him. Assuming he's going to DH to start, may eventually play first base eventually. But relative to the guy they've had at first base for the majority of the past 2.5 years or so, I know they released Wade earlier this season, it's worth about a 2.5%, 3% upgrade on a daily basis, which is pretty significant. Now, the ripple effect of the Devers acquisition is, I think it just pushes the Padres down and the Diamondbacks down a little bit. And I'd sort of been alluding to the Padres as a team to miss the playoffs the entire season. I got a lot of shit for it from Padres fans who are like, there's no way. We're selling at the deadline. What are you talking about? This team's great. Well, the Padres have been under 500 since May 1st. They're 20-21 since May 1st. In fact, they played 500 baseball since they started 7-0 and are just trending towards a team that is going to miss the playoffs. And across the board, I mean, this has been true for the whole season, so it's not really a revelation, but across the board, projection systems have liked them to miss the playoffs virtually the entire year. And right now, across the board, Pacoda, Fangraphs, ATC, Oopsie averages out to 37.6% for the Padres to make the playoffs. You can bet minus 105 on them to miss. Yesterday, you could have bet them at even money to miss compared to an average projection of around 45%. They actually got knocked down decently far because of both the loss yesterday and then the Devers trade being factored into the math on all of these projections. Because when I ran this yesterday, I don't think the Devers acquisition had been factored in on the San Francisco side. So they've dropped about 10% in terms of playoff probability within the past 36 hours since that Devers acquisition. Maybe they win tonight. They do have a big bullpen edge tonight. Dodgers throwing, I think, Wrobleski. The Padres are going to throw Randy Vasquez. Padres do have a big bullpen edge in that game. So maybe the Padres win tonight and we can get plus money on them to miss the playoffs tomorrow. But I think this is the time. This is the window to bet the Padres to miss. Just compared to the math and after the Devers acquisition, I do think it upgrades the Giants. The Braves are still coming. The Braves have said that they're not selling. They've been very public about that through Jeff Passan. You have the Padres, or you have the Mets and the Phillies, obviously, to contend with as well. And then you have the Cardinals and the Reds, in addition to the Cubs and the NL Central. So I don't think the West is getting more than one wild card team, ultimately. And I would imagine that wild card team is going to be the Giants, considering I don't think the Devers acquisition is going to be the last move they make. Trading Jordan Hicks, trading Kyle Harrison, now that team has some pitching needs, which they may look to fulfill and backfill as well. So yeah, Giants to make the playoffs, but I think the better way to bet it is the Padres to miss at about minus 105 right now. As I said, the average projection is around 38%. So closer to minus 165 to miss, and you could bet minus 105. That seems like a pretty big edge.
Yeah, Sean, we talked about this about a month ago, right? Even before the Devers move, I think I brought up to you Padres to miss the playoffs at about plus 105 to plus 110 range because what didn't even go into your cap is their ownership questions. And if they're going to be able to spend money, it's like they have Tatis, Machado, and Merrill locked up long term. They can't. Their minor league depth is so shallow because of all these moves that AJ Preller has made. They can't let Nick Pivetta and Michael King walk without getting nothing.
And season Arise as well.
And Arise, yes. Obviously, they could bring those guys back, but again, with the ownership situation in flux, you don't know how much money they're going to be able to spend. My theory is nothing. So if they're floating in this middle range here in the next month, in addition to them just maybe not being good enough, they might sell. They might, get rid of Pivetta, get rid of King, get rid of Arise, and reload because they can't waste the prime years of Tatis and Merrill. Obviously, Machado, before he ages out of being a productive major leaguer, they still have the Bogarts contract on the books, obviously. And right now, they're a Stars and Scrubs team. They need to be a Stars and better than Scrubs team, and the way to do that is to kind of cash in these chips for guys close to major league ready calibers to replace the Martin Maldonados and Tyler Wades on this roster.
The last piece I should mention, the Giants, the average projection on the Giants to win the West is around 7%. Derek Carty and the Bat have them closer to 12% and would make them about plus 760 implied. You can bet the Giants as high as plus 850 to win the NL West. So if you want a sprinkle on a long shot for the Giants to do what they did a few years ago and end up outclassing the Dodgers over a full 162 game schedule, the odds, the value is technically there. I'm just not sure if they'll figure out the roster fit when Chapman is coming back, etc. by the end of the year. You do not want Devers playing third base. I would imagine they will not give him a third baseman's glove. It will be first baseman or DH probably for him in San Fran. But yeah, there is technically value on the Giants to win the NL West. I just think the Padres to miss the playoffs is a significantly better value bet.
Before we get to Grant's dingers, we have the rest of your card. And let's start with the fact that you have both circled the Halos against the Yanks. Sean is on over 9, and Colin likes over 3.5 earned from Hendricks in this matchup. So let's combine these two plays. First up is Colin's prop. I'm going to be honest, I love this buy low spot on the Yankees lineup. They've mustered all of 5 runs in their last 5 games, and that includes extra innings in 2 of those 5 matchups. But Hendricks has a 5.2 ERA, and he's bringing a slump-busting element to the table here, and it's meatballs. I'm allowed to say that because I'm an Italian-American. His last 8 starts, 8 home runs allowed. He has one of the lowest K and whiff percentages in the bigs because people at the Carnival Dunk Tank throw harder than him. His fastball tops out at 87 miles per hour. 13 starts, 5 in which he's given up north of 3.5 earned this season. So is there any other angle to this prop that led you to circling this one for your card, Colin?
No, you honestly nailed it. We've had a lot of fun on this podcast and other Action Network mediums over the years finding pitchers to pick on. I think Dallas Keuchel was our OG. This guy's toast. Bet against him in every which way possible.
Arrieta got in there for a little bit.
Jake Arrieta. Oh, man. I forgot Arrieta in general. Yeah, and then Patrick Corbin the last couple of years. Obviously, Patrick Corbin's been kind of good this year after we thought he made his last start of his major league career last year. But I think Kyle Hendricks is that guy right now. I'm hopping on the Hendricks fade train for a little while here. He has the most pedestrian stuff of any pitcher in baseball, and that's not hyperbole. Among qualifying starting pitchers, his overall stuff plus of 82 is lower than anyone in baseball. It's 7 points below Miles Michaelis. And we all know Miles Michaelis just straight up doesn't miss bats. He is the most pitch to contact pitcher you can think of. Kyle Hendricks' stuff is worse than that. So I love fading the Angels, betting on the Yankees offense here tonight. As you mentioned, Sean's on the over. We'll let him get to that. I love that as well. I'm looking at different unique ways to fade him. You could go with the Yankees team total. My specific way is to bet just specifically on Hendricks allowing earned runs. There's no notable weather in New York tonight from a win perspective. The Yankees, as you mentioned, couldn't get on the scoreboard last night. I don't think that's going to happen 2 days in a row. They have Giancarlo Stanton back. I'm waiting for him to hit his first ball to the moon. And yeah, Hendricks just is a pitcher that I'm going to look to fade. every time out, especially in these bad matchups. He's pitching in Yankee Stadium, giving up a ton of fly balls against this Yankees offense. The torpedo bats, we haven't talked about the torpedo bats in months. We thought that was going to be the story of the season. Maybe the torpedo bats get back in the spotlight tonight for the Yankees against the worst starting pitcher in baseball in Kyle Hendricks.
And on the other side of it, too, you got Southeastern Louisiana Lion legend Will Warren getting the ball for the Yankees, and he's really struggled with command. So I understand that the Halos have struggled to hit on this road trip, but when you look at back-to-back starts for Warren, allowing 7 earned to the Dodgers, 4 earned to the Sox, and he walked back 4 batters in back-to-back starts, but in recent starts, those blow-ups against the Dodgers and Sox. So just from a perspective of keep the bat on your shoulder, see if he'll issue some free passes and get some runners into scoring position from the Angels' perspective, they probably, if they get to 3 or 4 runs in this game, that's going to be enough to aid this over. Any other angle that you're seeing that's pointing to this cruising past the number 9?
Yeah, we need to get the Angels to 3 or 4 runs. Yeah, well, I think the Angels need to get to 3 runs here. I think the Yankees can get to 6 pretty comfortably, and I do like Colin's bet quite a bit. This is obviously a great matchup for the Yankees. I mean, Hendricks, the fly ball rate is 10% above his career average, career high of 44%. Home run 9 of 1.52. He's at 1.1 for his career. So getting clobbered this year, batter is able to pull the ball in the air a little bit more. And in terms of Dinger Tuesday, I think this is a great game to target. My favorite target of the bunch would be Ben Rice. Ben Rice pulling 25% of balls in the air this season. And on the Yankees, Austin Wells, Cody Bellinger also have above average rates in that category. That is the number 1 key indicator stat for hitting home runs, pull air percentage. Rice, though, pulls about 50% of all batted balls. There's a little bit more intentionality in terms of what he's trying to do. The other 2 pull everything closer to 40% of the time, even when it's on the ground. So I just think in general, Ben Rice is trying to pull everything. And of Rice, Bellinger, and Austin Wells, Rice has the longest home run odds of the 3 today. So I like Ben Rice for Dinger Tuesday at around plus 500 or better. The Angels offense has been above average this season, are struggling a little bit of late, but with Mike Trout in there, everybody fully loaded. I project this team for a 104 WRC plus against right-handed pitching. So an above average offense. The thing is, and this is what would concern me with your earned run bets, Colin, this team is 27th defensively. So I do worry that they make an error with 2 outs and then give up a bunch of runs that do not get charged as earned runs to Hendricks, but do get charged as runs to Hendricks. So I don't want to send that bad beat out into the universe for you, but if you are betting earned run market, eventually you will run into a game where the pitcher deserved all the stuff he gave up, but didn't actually get it credited wise in terms of the box score. That would be a very frustrating way to lose in that market. I could see it happening though. But Logan O'Hoppe, I think O'Hoppe is like the real disaster. And when you combine the battery of Hendricks not being able to pitch effectively with the fact that O'Hoppe is one of the worst pitch framers in the sport, he's cost the Angels 30 strikes this year versus an average catcher. He's also a very bad blocker, and he's terrible at throwing out runners on the bases. I think he's only caught 15% of base runners in terms of caught stealing rate throughout his career, but ranks in the 3rd percentile for blocking, 8th percentile for framing, 21st percentile for pop time. So overall, O'Hoppe, a disaster behind the dish. The battery is probably the worst in baseball. You're combining one of the worst defensive catchers with maybe the worst overall starting pitcher. So yeah, I make this total about 9.8, bet the over 9 to minus 120. Over 9.5 I would take at even money. And then I'll sprinkle Ben Rice to hit her dinger tonight for Dinger Tuesday at about 5 to 1 or better.
I love the Rice pull. Like that is a buy low situation. Ben Rice was like all the rage that first month this season. Since the start of May, he's hitting 200, 260, 358 with only 4 homers. Like he's come down to earth big time. 7 walks and 26 strikeouts in that span. So it makes sense his odds are that low, but the metrics you mentioned make him like that's why you buy low. You're not going to bet Aaron Judge to hit a home run at plus 220. He's the most likely guy to hit a home run, but there's no value in that number. So when you get the longer number on a guy like Rice, I'd be willing to bet. We've got Grant Neiffer's Dinger Tuesday segment coming up here very shortly. We haven't heard any of his dinger picks yet. I'd be willing to bet there are at least 3 Yankees on his card tonight. It'll be interesting to see if I'm right about that because everything lines up for them tonight.
And Colin, you have a dinger play right here with Devers going deep. I mean, in his last game as a Red Sox, he took Max Fried yard. Now he flies across country, probably didn't even have time to look on Zillow for an apartment, throw a jersey on, get him in the lineup. You think he's going to come out guns blazing against Slade Ciccone, taking him deep. And it doesn't hurt that the Guardians righty has given up a ton of home runs this season, 5 through 5 starts. So what was your price point cutoff to get in on Devers?
Well, first of all, I am absolutely shocked, and I would have lost a ton of money betting that I was the only one to give out a dinger pick on this show before Grant's segment. Sean actually beat me to it, giving out a dinger Tuesday play on Ben Rice. I'm shocked about that. And I'm going to be honest with you, Mike, this is totally a vibes bet with Devers. I think that tonight's game could go one of two ways for him. He goes 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts, or he goes yard as a big fuck you to the Red Sox for trading him. And this is a good matchup for him to have the latter result. Slade Ciccone allows plenty of fly balls and home runs. The wind's blowing out at 15 miles an hour in San Fran tonight. Obviously, the Giants Park minimizes wind impact a bit, but it certainly can't hurt. And as you mentioned, it's Dinger Tuesdays. It's Dinger Tuesday. He's plus 350 at FanDuel right now. Use your Dinger Tuesday token. You get him at plus 525, and that's way too good to pass up on a dude who has, like, I could see him having like a Manny Ramirez like second half as just like I hate my former team. I want to stick it to them. Unfortunately, he's on the other side of the country, but the only way to do it is to just make their fans and their front office watch him absolutely terrorize opposing pitchers and lead the Giants to the playoffs. And it could start tonight. And with it being Dinger Tuesday, you'd be able to boost it up above that 500 number. That's too good to pass up on a guy with Devers talent.
Sean, you have 2 totals to hit here before we get to Grant's card. You got the Orioles Rays over 9. I mean, I essentially just looked at the pitching matchup and seeing, who the Orioles are sending to the bump here in Dean Kremer. I mean, just look at, his recent history against the Tigers, but then also against the A's. In those 2 matchups, giving up 13 hits, giving up 9 earned. Is it as simple as you think this is a potential blow up for him? And then, obviously the Orioles lineup had been playing a little bit better. They finally cooled off in terms of momentum in their last game, but this is not the team that started the season that was essentially dead weight in terms of helping an over get to the finish line.
Yeah, this game was 7-1 yesterday with better starting pitchers through 5 innings, and nobody scored over the final 4. There were 5 double plays hit in this game. Just a bunch of shenanigans ultimately kept this game under. Junior Caminero hit a bomb to the left field wall with 1 on. That fell literally like 2 feet short of being a home run. So this game could have been on 8 runs through 3 innings yesterday. Ultimately ended up landing on 8 through 5 and finishing on 8 through 9. So over should have gotten there yesterday. On it again today. I make this about 9.8. I made it 9.5 yesterday. Difference is mostly due to the differential in starting pitcher quality because Littell and Kramer definitely worse than Pepio and Eflin. Now both Littell and Kramer averaging home run rates well above the major league average. And Littell this year has been disastrous in terms of long ball, 2.2 homers per 9, 1.5 for his career. What I found was most interesting and what I expected is, okay, he's pitching outside now. He's not pitching in the Trop anymore. Probably just giving up more home runs because he's pitching outside. Not the case. 1.6 home runs per 9 at home this year, 2.66 on the road. He's just giving up more home runs in general. And Dean Kramer, as you alluded to, also 1.36 homers per 9 this year, 1.32 for his career. League-wide, 1.1 is league average. So both of these guys allow home runs at a high clip, right-handed pitchers in a park with a very short right field porch. In terms of dinger targets, Cedric Mullins, about a 32% pull air percentage. Brandon Lau, 24%, both above the major league average. Mullins, one of the best. I think he's 14th in all of baseball in pull air percentage. Bet him yesterday to hit a dinger. Not going to not bet him on Dinger Tuesday. May include Brandon Lau as well, just because those guys both get the ball in the air, and considering the humidity, the wind blowing out, 94-degree temperatures on field today. It'll actually be 87, but it's going to feel like 94 with the humidity. So I made this, as I said, about 9.8. I bet over 9.5 to minus 103. And then Mullins and Lau as your potential dinger props from this game as well.
We'll close with your under between the Brewers and Cubbies. Chad Patrick looked super comfortable in May, and keep in mind this is his debut season in the bigs, but he's coming off the worst start of his young career, a game score of 38 against the Braves. He did strike out 8, but he walked 3 and he gave up 5 earned. Still, he's been solid and a really good bet to at least give a quality start, throughout the season. So then it turns to Ben Brown. Can he do his part? He's been nearly impossible to nail down from a betting perspective this season. He's been shelled 5 times this year, allowing 5 or more earned. And then he can point to 4 starts since the beginning of May, where he's essentially looks fantastic. And the other concern here is that the wind is pushing straight out 10 miles an hour into the center field fence. So with those concerns, the pitching volatility, the wind, what has drawn you to the under between the Brewers and Cubs?
It was just too high. I opened 9.5. I made this 8.75. It has come down to 9 at juice. So there's no value for me on this game at this point. But I will point out for the remainder of this series, these are the 2 best defensive teams in my model. And these are 2 bullpens that have performed much better over the past 30 days than they did over the first month and a half of the season. In terms of defense runs saved, Cubs are 3rd. Brewers are 3rd in outs above average. They both rank worse in the other category that they do not rank well in each. But I would make this game about 9.4 with 2 average defensive teams. The defensive quality knocks it down closer to 8.75. Do not have umpires on this game, so I can't finalize my total at that number. We'll get those umpires closer to 4 p.m. or so. You mentioned Chad Patrick leading NL rookies in wins above replacement. I think he's been super effective this season. What I like about Patrick and what gets hidden is the pop-ups. Even though you got the wind blowing out tonight and Chad Patrick has a very high fly ball rate, he gets a lot of pop-ups. So they're not normal fly balls that are going to fly out for homers. They're going to be weakly hit fly balls in the infield, which are effectively just as good as a strikeout. I love guys who get pop-ups because it does not show up in their strikeout minus walk rate, but it is just as effective as getting a strikeout. Can't advance a base, etc. Nothing is going to happen positively for the offense as a result of it. Mike Fier is one of my favorite guys to bet on back in the day. A lot of pop-ups in his profile, especially when he was playing in Oakland. Allowed to say Oakland because that's where they were playing at the time. Now, this game had originally triggered a few Action Lab systems as well for unders. Those are gone at this point, given the updated data information on the betting splits. I will give out one more total, though, since this one is out of range, and I did bet it this morning. The Rockies and Nationals over 9.5. 82 degrees there today, 5-mile-an-hour winds blowing out to left field, but it is incredibly humid. 94% humidity in DC today. It's going to be raining throughout the day. It's going to be raining throughout the day in New York as well, which is going to increase the humidity at night. Every 15% increase in humidity is worth about a 13-foot increase in batted ball distance. So the average humidity for June in DC is about 67%. As I said tonight, closer to 94%. You're going to be getting an extra 25 to 30 feet on every batted fly ball just as a result of the high humidity. So I make this about 9.9. You can bet over 9.5 to minus 105. And we'll see if I add anything else on the card today. The Pirates, as I said, were borderline. The White Sox are borderline. I don't necessarily love this card today because I don't want to bet on Bailey Falter. I don't want to bet on Kyle Hendricks and the Angels. Not a lot of starting pitchers I was super excited to bet on at underdog odds. I'd say the White Sox underdog, the likeliest to add of the bunch. But we'll see if I add anything else, and I'll make sure to enter some digger props in the app as well.
One final point from me on one of the games you just talked about on Baltimore-Tampa. Something worth watching maybe tonight, maybe going forward. I've been very intrigued by the stuff of Dean Kramer for a while. Like, I think he's a guy who's like so close to putting it all together. His last start against Detroit, they opened for him. They had Keegan Aiken throw the first inning. He balked, and he actually looked great. Like, you look at 7 innings, 4 earned runs, and it's not like, I mean, it's not a quality start, obviously. He had one inning, his second or third inning, he had a 4-batter sequence where they went homer, single, single, homer. And other than that, he allowed 1 run and 2 walks over the other 6 innings. Like, I'm wondering if that unlocked something in him. Also, it's just worth noting for tonight, if you're betting props, if you're betting listed pitcher, whatever, with the top of the Rays lineup, if they want to avoid Brandon Lau, who's the other lefties at the top.
Josh Lowe as well.
Yeah, Josh Lowe. They opened with Keegan Aiken today. Again, have Kramer start in the second inning. Worth watching. The Orioles also opened for Povich the other day, so it's something that the Orioles are starting to do a little bit more. Maybe it unlocks something in Kramer. Maybe the last start was just a good outing, because he has those from time to time. He struck out 8 in those 7 innings. He got Baltimore all the way through the 8th inning of that game after missing the first inning. Something to watch with him, because his stuff has been decent. Maybe opening for him unlocks something. At the very least, I wouldn't be surprised. I know he's the listed starting pitcher for tonight right now, as of this recording. Happens sometimes where the teams announce a little bit later when lineups come out. Oh, actually, we're opening. We're going to open with this other guy and have him bulk behind him. That's possible with him tonight.
Bottom of the AL East starting to play really well too. Red Sox winning in Seattle last night. They've won 6 straight. Rays and Jays both above 500 and sitting close to wild card position. And now the Orioles are getting on a hot streak as well. So yeah, the AL East top to bottom is kind of catching fire.
Tampa Bay Rays, by the way, just because we're on this, with openers, they're the team that popularized the opener, right? A couple of years ago. The Rays lead the majors in starts of 6+ innings this season. Never in my life would have guessed that.
While pitching mostly outdoors as well. Not even getting the benefit of the trop and the suppressed run scoring environment. They're playing it in an increased run scoring environment too. So yeah, kind of crazy.
Sean, all your humidity information, I feel like if Action Network wants to be a seller at the trade deadline, we could send you to the Weather Channel, get 3 or 4 prospects. I can just see you reporting from Biloxi, talking about a hurricane potentially hitting the Gulf Coast. So just we'll keep that in mind in terms of your value moving forward.
I used to regret not doing coding or, something more math, science-based in school. Now I regret not getting into meteorology. So yeah, it's past regrets. And if I could go in a time machine, I would probably consider having become a meteorologist, just because I feel like that's the most application to what I'm doing currently now.
Episode of Payoff Pitch coming up soon with Sean Zerillo and Kevin Roth of Roto Grinders.
And Mike Trout as well. My special guest is Mike Trout.
Yes.
All right, Grant has been sitting patiently in the dugout, listening to you guys trying to steal his dinger thunder, but he's coming from Scores and Odds with his home run props for today's slate. Grant, take it away.
Thanks, guys. It's Dinger Tuesday. That means we got a 50% profit boost over on FanDuel. And I got a 3-leg parlay for dingers plus 16,700. That's 167 to 1 with the 50% boost. Let's get right into the first pick. Brandon Lau plus 420 over at FanDuel. Gets a matchup versus Dean Kramer. Dean Kramer is a big plus matchup for lefty power, not only through his career, but also this season, giving up around a 1.4, 1.5 home runs per 9. The ballpark is fantastic for lefty power, that Mickey Mouse Tampa Bay ballpark, short right field porch. Balls can fly out of there, even if they're not even hit that hard. Lau is a great hitter, been having a great season this year, around a 15% barrel rate on the year, or 14% barrel rate on the year. The weather is great, mid-80s, wind blowing out slightly at 6 miles per hour. High humidity, around 66%. This is all-around great hitting conditions, great matchup, great odds for Lau. I'm loving it. Next up, Kyle Tucker, plus 370 over at FanDuel. Tucker gets a matchup versus Patrick. Patrick has only given up 0.26 home runs per 9 so far in his short career just this season. But looking at the underlying numbers, high hard contact rate, high fly ball rate, only a 2.2% home run for fly ball rate. So there's absolutely no way that should continue or even can continue. He's due for some massive regression. Similar numbers between righties and lefties, and giving up like 1.36 home run per 9, 2 righties on the year. Expecting lefties to be about that, if not a little bit higher. Weather over in Chicago. Some people are worried about delay. Some people are worried about postponement. Roth right now thinks that the game should play clean. Obviously, things can change. If the game doesn't play, it's a no bet. But as of right now, the value I'm really liking on Tucker at plus 370. And the matchup, again, is a good one. And the weather, if the game plays, 83 degrees, wind blowing out at 8 miles per hour in what is probably the most, if not one of the most, wind-receptive ballparks in the league. High humidity. Everything's great for hitting. And the odds just aren't high enough on Tucker, who's one of the best hitters in the league. Last up, Christian Walker, plus 360, I believe. Today, plus 370. It's going right between those two. Gets a matchup versus JP Sears. Sears has been crushed this season by righty power, giving up around a 2 home run per 9. He's always been a plus matchup for righty power. His numbers are a little bit different than what they should be from playing over in Oakland for years. But this ballpark, not even remotely the same as Oakland. Great for hitting. Temperatures today, 88 degrees during game time. Wind blowing out at 6 miles per hour in what should be a very wind-receptive ballpark. 30% humidity. Walker, he's due for some positive regression. The underlying numbers are good. Only has 9 bombs on the season, but he is definitely due for more, and this ballpark is fantastic for hitting. So decent chance he hits one out here. All three of these guys, great matchup. All three of these guys, pretty good odds. Parlay them all together, throw on that boost. 167-1. Boom. That's your Dinger Tuesday bet. I'm out of here. Pockets!
All right, that'll do it for today's episode of Payoff Pitch. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to tail some of the bets that you heard from Sean, Colin, or Grant, go ahead and look for the quick slip links in the episode description. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to the pod. Also, check out the Action Network Discord. The link to sign up for that is in the episode description. We'll be back on Friday with more best bets, underdogs, and the rest of Sean's card. We're also going to have another special guest there, so be sure to tune in on Friday. We'll be back Friday, Monday, Tuesday, every single week. So make sure to have us be a part of your regular weekly betting schedule. For Sean Zerillo and Colin Whitchurch, I'm Mike Calabrese. Thanks for listening to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. And as always, best of luck with all your bets.